Well, shares of Apple have struggled lately, as you may well know, falling 6% so far this year and ending a fraction lower today. And that likely pushed a lot of stock owners to attend the company's annual shareholders meeting today in Cupertino, California. Our Josh Lipton was there and has more on what went on.
Apple shareholders drove and flew in from all around the country today to listen to CEO Tim Cook speak at the company's annual shareholders meeting. Shareholders gathered at the company's headquarters in Cupertino, California, to vote on 10 proposals, including executive compensation, company practices, and its 2014 stock plan. They also voted overwhelmingly to re-elect their directors. Toward the end of the meeting, Tim Cook fielded questions from shareholders who pressed the CEO on why he didn't speak more about new products in the company's pipeline. Cook said Apple didn't want to offer a roadmap to its competitors and that the company, in his words, gets ripped off enough by rivals. He also emphasized that the company is spending a lot more money on research and development, which he says demonstrates its commitment to product innovation. There is also a lot of speculation about what Apple's next product could be: a wearable device, an improved set-top box, or maybe a new service such as mobile payments. Some analysts on Wall Street worry that these ideas sound exciting, but not necessarily revolutionary. Still, shareholders didn't share in that concern.
Both because the employees themselves are passionate about what they do, but more, I was a systems engineer quite a while ago, and I see the technology that's ongoing now outside of the company, and I think Apple can just capitalize on technology that exists now.
The company's stock is down about 6% this year, but it's up more than 35% since its low last June. Tim Cook made a point today of saying he isn't interested in the short-term moves of the stock, but rather positioning this company to benefit and prosper for the long term. Josh Lipton, Nightly Business Report, Cupertino, California.
Let's get the reaction now to that meeting from one of Apple's largest shareholders, CalPERS. This is the California Public Employees Retirement System. Ann Simpson is the Senior Portfolio Manager and Director of Corporate Governance at CalPERS, the nation's largest public pension fund. And you have your firm or fund has had a position in Apple for many years, since the 1980s, so you've been to a lot of these shareholder meetings over the years. Did Tim Cook say anything that you think is going to inspire and encourage investors and make them feel confident about the direction he's taking the company?
Yes, I think the most impressive thing about Tim Cook is that he stays cool, calm and collected when there is noise and distraction all around him. The company's been under a lot of intense short-term pressure, notably from Mr. Carl Icahn. I think he's been smartly rebuffed and the voice of reason has prevailed. This is a company that's very important to CalPERS for the long term, and we're very pleased that Tim Cook has got his eye on the ball. He's thinking about the long term, he's thinking about innovation, and he's considering the culture and integrity and issues like human rights and sustainability, everything that makes Apple a good corporate citizen. And we know that's what's going to underpin success for the long term.
Before we talk a little bit more about Apple, since you raised the name of Carl Icahn, let me get your impressions of his investment thrusts into several critical technology companies: Apple, Dell within the past year, and most recently eBay. In several of those cases, he has gone right at the question of corporate governance. Is he acting responsibly on behalf of shareholders in his crusade, from his point of view, to improve corporate governance? What do you think?
Well, you know, there's people who make a lot of noise and get attention, and there are people who sit down and have a sensible conversation and really work things out over the long term. And Mr. Icahn has a very different style. We say, you know, there are three types of shareholder out there. There are owners, there are traders, and there are raiders. And CalPERS, we consider ourselves to be owners. We're there for the long term. We expect to talk. We expect to take action when needed, but we don't really think it's sensible to try to make massive changes at companies by making rather colorful statements to the press or tweeting a new strategy for a big company. This is probably provocative action intended to get attention, but I think, if we're talking about long-term strategic issues, it's best done with a cool head and probably with the door closed where people can sit and talk properly.
Well, one thing that Carl Icahn has done, he's put a lot of attention on how Apple manages its cash, and it has a lot of it. How do you feel that the conversation behind those closed doors is changing about cash management, and are you satisfied with what's going on?
Right. Well, I think Carl Icahn was very late to the party on this, because the issue of the pile of cash was under discussion 2 years ago when the company first set out its plans. Since then, the pile of cash has got bigger, and that's a problem that you want to have. You'll remember last year, another hedge fund, David Einhorn, took a tilt at Apple on the same issue. He didn't make much of a move forwards on it, and Apple has done the right thing. It's kept steadily to its plan, it's communicated what it's doing, it's committed to $100 billion to be returned to shareholders, and it's going to review those numbers in March and April. And we're satisfied that that's that's a sensible course of action. We don't want rash decisions made in the heat of a dispute with a short-term activist. That's not sensible.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Ann. Ann Simpson with CalPERS.